right, so let's move on to the chapter on groups and organizations. So some of the terms that are important in there include like what's a group, what is a primary and a secondary group. So if you remember now, group is, just the core definition of group is you have two or more people that identify with each other and interact for a purpose. A primary group is a group that tends to be smaller. Their focus tends to be on like just the being together or joy or like having fun interacting with each other. And those groups tend to provide more support. Secondary group tends to be larger and it tends to interact together to try to accomplish a goal. It tends to be task focused. So let me give you some examples. I want you to tell me if you think it's a primary or secondary group, okay? Your 300 member intro psychology class at NDSU. Yeah, assuming that you're interacting together for a purpose, correct? Okay, how about like your family? Primary. How about the West Fargo High School track team? Secondary. Yep. Now over time you could be friends with like your position group or like the sprinters or whatever, but it's gonna start out at least as secondary. Okay, what would like it's Davies today, right? That you guys play? Okay, so Davies basketball team reflective to West Fargo basketball team. What would be the in group and what would be the out group? Reflective to you.
West Fargo would be in and Davis would be out.
Yep, exactly. Yep. If you have a group that you kind of look up to, you try to model your life after you value their opinion, you want to emulate them a little bit, what type of group is that? That's a reference group, I heard somebody say it. Yep, reference group is correct. Okay, what is a formal organization that has formal rules, specialization, formal written communication, and a hierarchy of offices? What did Weber call that? Starts with a B. Bureaucracy, yep. So be aware of some of the factors of a bureaucracy, like parts of it, and then also some problems with bureaucracy. Problems of bureaucracy would include like alienation or inertia. Okay, let's move on to chapter 6. I'm gonna speed up on the like definition part because I wanna push on. Chapter 7 now, sorry. Sexuality, yep. Okay, what's the difference between sex and gender in a sociological sense?
Sex is like the biological.
Yep.
Gender is like what you tie to emotion.
Gender is the cultural traits tied to a certain sex, whereas sex is the biology. Okay, so what are the core characteristics that make somebody male or female? What's that called? Primary. And then what are the like bodily development that's not the core characteristics? Secondary. So facial hair, deeper voice, more upper body muscle mass. What type of sex characteristic is that?
Male.
Yeah. Primary or secondary?
Oh.
Secondary. Yeah, secondary. Okay. What are people that have bodily development that are both male and female called? Intersexual, yeah. What is the development of like media that's sexually explicit that's supposed to cause arousal? Pornography. What is the selling of sexual services? What is the term for people that are sexually attracted to someone of the same sex? Homosexual. What about people that are attracted to someone of the opposite sex? Hetero. How about both? bisexual, okay. Alright, let's go to the next chapter on deviance, chapter 8. I'm gonna try to go through the terms a little more quickly here, otherwise we're gonna be here till like 6. Okay, deviance. What is deviance? Let's start with defining that.
Breaking norms.
The recognized violation of a social norm, yep. What if you're violating a norm that exists in the law? What is that called? Crime, yep. Having norms and also having laws about crimes, they help to function to regulate someone's thoughts and behavior. What is that called? Attempts by society to regulate a person's thoughts and behavior. That's called social control. Social control. Just realized I forgot to do attendance for our class here today. Oops. Anybody absent today?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Okay, next. What is the formal organization in society that includes the courts, police, and prison officials that try to deal with crimes? Criminal justice system is correct. What is the theory related to deviance that says that it's not so much about what people do, but it's rather how people respond and identify? What theory is that called? That's called labeling theory, right? What is it where, in the past it used to be considered like immoral, but now it's considered like a disorder, medical problem?
So, medicalization.
Medicalization of deviance is correct, yep. What is Robert Merton's theory that basically says deviance arises out of the ability for people to accomplish goals in society related to the means they have to achieve those goals? What theory is that? Remember there's a box, 4 parts, 5 parts actually. But
Strain?
strain theory is correct, yep. Okay, so let's break down strain theory a little bit. Strain theory, remember, you have, do you accept the goal, and then also do you accept the means for the goal, or the means for accomplishing the goal, I should say. Let me get the graphic here, just so I can show you. Right, so it looks kind of like this in the map, right? Got a box. So it's basically asking, can you achieve the goal, and then do you accept the means to achieve the goal? So if you accept the conventional means, and you also accept the goal itself, that's called conformity, right? What if you accept the goal, so like the goal is to make a bunch of money, but you reject the means? You're like, I don't want to go to college, whatever, I'm going to start a unique business, or I'm going to do what that James Holzer did, the sports betting guy that like dominated Jeopardy for a while. If you ever saw him, just destroyed people. Okay, what's that called? If you accept the goal, like you're like, I want to make money, but you don't accept the traditional means for achieving that goal. So basically it's one of the boxes, right? That's called innovation. Okay, what if you reject the goal and you reject the means? Rebellion is you come up with new goals and new means. Yeah, if you reject both, it's retreatism. And then if you accept the means but you don't really care about the goal, that's ritualism. What's the difference between corporate crime and an organized crime? Corporate crime and organized crime. Okay, organized crime is like the mafia, the cartels in Mexico, the drug cartels in Mexico. The whole purpose of that organization is to break laws, right? Corporate corporate crime is like, let's say Sanford, I'm just making this up, okay? Sanford is, as far as I know, a reputable business, they do a good job, whatever. But let's say that we found out that there were a whole bunch of people within Sanford management that were like, let's overbill insurance companies to try to make more money, right? That's corporate crime. Sanford has a legitimate purpose, right? It's good that we have hospitals, they do a lot of good, right? But let's say there were people within that organizationally that got together and like, they were saying we can benefit this company by trying to overbill insurance companies, that's corporate crime. If it's one individual within Sanford that like uses his or her position to try to make more money for themselves illegally, what type of crime is that? White collar, yep, exactly. What if you commit a crime and it's motivated by your racial or other dislike of people? Hate crime, yep. What are the 4 justifications for punishment we talked about?
Rehab?
Rehab is one, yep. Retribution is another, so rehab is you wanna fix the offender.
Deterrence.
Deterrence is another, so you make an example out of them. If you watch the news, the Astros, they found out that they were cheating, big time if you're a sports fan, big time. They fined the organization $5 million, which is the maximum amount of money they could fine the organization. They suspended their manager and their general manager for a year, and they took 2 first-round draft picks and 2 second-round draft picks from the team, which is like a big punishment. So you read the story on that, basically what they wanna tell the rest of the teams is like, don't do what they did. So deterrence is like scaring other people, right? Okay, and then what's the last one?
Societal protection.
Societal protection, yep, so you send somebody to prison so they can't harm somebody else, okay? What's the term for, people that re-offend? If you re-offend, you commit crimes again, that's called recidivism. Okay, let's go to social stratification, be chapter 9. Okay, stratification is all about like how society ranks different people. It's the system in which they rank people. And then the ability to change rankings is called social mobility. Now remember how I said there's kind of 3 ways that traditionally societies have been ranked. One is called a caste system, one is called a meritocracy, and one is called a class system. And if you look at societies as a whole, I would argue that you've never had a pure meritocracy. You've also never had a pure caste system. So in a caste system, remember earlier we talked about ascription versus achievement, ascribed and achieved status. So in a meritocracy, your position is based totally on which of those 2 things? Achievement or ascription?
Description.
Achievement. In a meritocracy, it's you get your position by merit, right? Ascription means like a social position you have based on birth, right? So in a caste system like ancient India, if you were part of the priestly caste, the Brahmin, and you had kids, your kids automatically were part of that caste too, right? They got legal benefits, they had more money, like a lot of things because they were in that caste. A social class system is in the middle. A class system considers merit and it also considers position based on birth. Okay, what is it called if you have like your upper class? Remember Weber talked about power, prestige, and then wealth as being the 3 variables to consider social class. He called that your SES, your socioeconomic scale, okay, or socioeconomic status if applied to individual. So for SES, it's not just money. In the United States, that's probably the main thing, but power and prestige also matter. So if you have a lot of power, a lot of prestige, and you make a lot of money, you would have high status consistency, right? That's what it's called when it's all kind of the same. So somebody like the president, I always use that as an example, although Donald Trump's probably not the best example now, but let's take Barack Obama, right? He made a lot of money, but there's people in the United States that make a lot more money than the president, just based on the presidential salary, right? But how much power does the president have? A lot, probably more than anybody else in the country, and there's a lot of prestige with that occupation, right? Not everybody gets to be president.
Who came up with that? Did you say that?
Weber came up with the idea of socioeconomic status. Yep.
That's like W-E-B.
W-E-B-E-R, yep.
So Weber.
Yeah, but it's German, so. Yep. Okay, what's the difference between a white collar occupation and a blue collar occupation?
Professionalism.
Training, prestige, pay in general, although that's changing to some degree. What is consuming products because of the status that they send? Conspicuous consumption, yep. What type of poverty is it where, like, if you don't get help, you're gonna die?
Absolutely.
Absolute. What type of poverty is it where you have to, like, you know, wear used clothing all the time and
Relative.
relative poverty, yep. Which type do we have more of in the United States? Relative, yeah, there's not as much absolute. Okay, let's talk about the next chapter, global stratification. So we have 3 categories of countries that they define people into based on income. What are those categories called? High income, middle income, and low income. Where do most people in the world live? Middle income, because China and India are both middle income, right? What is the process by which one country exploits another country? They enrich themselves at the expense of another country through political and economic control. Colonialism, yep. So in the past, like, countries would just directly control other countries. Now, multinational corporations influence countries in ways that are kind of unfair. That's called neo-colonialism. What are the 2 theories that are used to explain why some countries are rich and why some are poor?
Modernization.
Modernization and
Independence.
dependency. Good. Which one of those 2 theories aligns more with functionalism? Modernization and dependency aligns more with which theory? Conflict. So modernization theory basically says that poor nations are poor because they haven't modernized their technology, their culture, or maybe both. Whereas dependency theory says the reason poor countries are poor is because rich nations exploit them, they keep them dependent. So to give you an example of a cultural belief, I used to play a video where it was in, like, West Africa. These people would mine. They'd go underground and mine for gold. And they believed that if you wore shoes or other equipment while you were mining, that it would, like, curse you. It was like a supernatural kind of curse. So you had to take off your shoes and other equipment before you went underground, right?
That's smart.
So, according to dependency theory, they haven't adopted modern cultural beliefs that say, yeah, that doesn't really make sense. You shouldn't do that. It'd be better for you if you actually wore that gear. Because they haven't adopted those beliefs, they aren't as able to mine as effectively as other countries. That's why they're poor. Okay? Okay, let's go to gender stratification now. Gender strat would be chapter 11. That talks about the differences between what? In status between who? Males and females, right? What is a society where men are in charge? What's that called? Patriarchy. What about if females are in charge? Matriarchy.
You're okay.
What's the term for any category of people that is distinguished and set apart? That is treated, like, differently? What's the term for a category of people distinguished by some characteristic that society sets apart and subordinates, that kind of takes advantage of? Minority, yep. Okay, what's the term for the theory that basically says, if you want to understand how minorities are treated, you have to look at how, like, being a woman and being black and being maybe homosexual, how all those work together? That's called intersection theory. Yep, intersection theory. And what is the, thing that seeks to, argue for the equality between men and women? The social movement,
Feminism.
feminism, yep. What are the three types of feminism?
Radical, liberal, and conventional.
Socialist is the last one, yep. Radical, liberal, and socialist is correct. So radical wants to get rid of all distinctions between males and females. Liberal basically says, you know, society as it exists is okay, but we should tweak it a little bit, maybe pass some laws here or there, start some new programs. Socialist feminism basically says that capitalist system is the one that makes the problem. So if you gotta change it to more of a communist or socialist system, and without doing that, women will always be treated equally, or unequally, I should say. Okay, Anna, why don't you push stop and then we'll start